technology in our whole lives, we can actually upload content onto the internet. We can actually be not just creative technologies, but any of the content that we're producing. We now have the ability to encrypt that. We can tokenize it, and therefore we can own it and ascribe the rights that we would like to have in it, from ongoing royalties to any other uses of smart contracting that we would wish to use. That is now possible, and is making it to front page news all over the world, is making it into Saturday Night Live, and has really caught the heart of the public zeitgeist that all of a sudden data ownership is possible and popular. So I really didn't expect that from the last time I saw you till now. I would say that the general public has some sort of understanding of what it means to own your data. I definitely thought we had another 3 to 5 years coming for this, but I couldn't be happier that we're in the position that we are today.
Brittany, I need you to step back real quick. When you say own your own data, I hear what you're saying. Can you tell us an instance where someone says, I finally have my data and no one else could have it unless I give them permission?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say one of the best use cases is as I said, NFTs, which I think our other two panelists are are pretty much experts on. But what that means is that I am creating digital content, which is data. It's all ones and zeros, whether it's my personal information or whether it's a painting or music that I'm uploading. All of that is digital content. It's data.
But wouldn't you call that more a digital asset as opposed, because when I think my data, I'm thinking about my user activity, my personal data that really seems to be stolen by everybody. Obviously, Facebook and all these social platforms steal our data or overutilize it. Is there a use case to where our data, our identities, is owned by us? Are we seeing that happen yet?
Absolutely. I mean, on the blockchain, I would say the rise of using decentralized IDs, also known as DIDs, has also been a huge thing this past year, especially as there is more mass adoption of using blockchain technology across traditional industries, from finance to big brands. So that is definitely becoming a more commonplace thing that we are seeing. But I would say in terms of the general public understanding what it actually means to own your data, own digital content, NFTs has won the day in terms of what actually cracked the code of what would be the first mass adopted application of blockchain technology. I didn't think that would be the case, but it's pretty exciting that it is.
So true. Like 2 years ago, nobody was talking about NFTs as much as we are talking about this now. And if we go outside the blockchain space, like, do you think that in the last 2 years, in general, the literacy regarding privacy settings, with all the current digitalization of the world due to the pandemic, like, is it a positive change, or do you think that actually people think less of their data protection?
I would say that it has become more commonplace for people to expect to give away their data because everyone has been forced to lead a digital life, and we didn't expect that. So now, unfortunately, people are assuming that instead of any in-person meetings, that they're going to conduct a meeting on a digital platform, creating exponentially more data than they ever did before. But also, I believe that because people are spending so much more time on technology, they're starting to be aware that there is a better way to do it. They're starting to actually understand what being targeted by advertisers looks like, if they didn't understand that before, and starting to either be creeped out by it or start to question, what can I do to protect myself? Or what can I do to protect my children and my family? Because for the first time, everyone in my household is online and using technology all the time. And that's where I really think blockchain and emerging technologies have a huge role to play.
It's interesting when we talk about that identity side. So like an artist, if they go to a platform like Twitter or Facebook, their fans really aren't their fans, because at any point in time, I'm sorry about my camera freezing up, guys. At any point in time, Facebook could just turn their website, their Facebook page off, or their Twitter page. Now we're in an area to where that doesn't necessarily happen. Now someone like an Akon can actually own his fans. So are we seeing an adoption, and this maybe goes to VESA and to Lauren, are we seeing artists finally getting on the bandwagon saying this is a great opportunity now to be working with the digital data side?
Lauren, do you want to go first?
Unmute yourself, Lauren.
We are now unmuted. Obviously, this is a major piece of, an industry revolution. I would say not only in music, but in all of entertainment, really for all artists. Unfortunately, I think, especially in the art world, there's been a lot of suffering in this area, whether it's everything from what you just spoke about with your not knowing the technicalities of how to own your digital identity, to not making sure that you get royalties paid, having to depend on someone else, another entity to do that, and not really having the infrastructure exist to do that yourself unless you are just extremely, extremely entrepreneurial and choose to go out and build that for yourself. And that's probably 1 in a million. You've got other things to focus on. So right now, I would say, especially as someone who's coming from the producer side of things and the licensing and rights side of things, this is a very exciting time for me. It's kind of like the stuff underneath that no one really talks about, right? That no one really sees. You don't realize how much people are getting cheated out of what they're actually owed, or what they should own, but don't even know that that's an option to own. So I'm really excited to see where this develops. And
but is it something easy for an artist to do? It's interesting. I'm the oldest one here. I'm in my mid 50s, but when we saw artists really get involved, say 15, 20 years ago, it was people like will.i.am. will.i.am would jump in and he would kind of lead the charge for a lot of innovation back in the early 2000s, right? He was the one. Is there a will.i.am of today, an artist that's kind of leading the charge to get other artists to kind of follow along?
I would say that will.i.am is the will.i.am of today. Only because I know you're going to laugh at that, but that's true. When I was thinking about artists that are at that level of being so entrepreneurial, of being technical, of wanting to go out and learn and figure out how to kind of create a new space within these sub-industries that can help benefit their industry, Will was literally someone at the top of the list for me. Obviously, Imogen Heap is someone that's doing that. There's tons of people in hip hop. I would say the rock and roll world is probably suffering a little bit more than the others, but it's something that I think technologists need to help create, because we need engineers to do this. And so what we've got to do is figure out how to create these partnerships between people in the entertainment industry and the tech industry, and actually build these platforms out properly. Right now, it's all quite experimental.
But it's interesting. The artist and the engineers have to have dialogue together.
Yeah, and that
you're
is
an artist.
Usually a nightmare.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Usually a nightmare. I find myself between business and art, which is sometimes a nightmare and sometimes a talent. But yeah.
How's that going with you, VESA? Are you mind melding with the engineers?
Occasionally, yes, but luckily they're making my job a little bit easier on the technical side and solving those problems. But I have, for the past 4 years or so, having been here full time, had many of these conversations and helped them understand of what might be a problem from my point of view, or what the technicalities are, why it would be a barrier for others to enter. But it has become a melt of some sort. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember your first experience of a tokenized art? Like, what are the tips that you could give maybe to those who haven't yet tokenized their art?
I think it becomes increasingly more obvious to people if they get the big picture first. So if I scroll a little bit back to help the sort of counterintuitive part of this for artists, is that ever since the dawn of computers, we've had digital creativity, but the art world hasn't really cared about it that much because they couldn't really monetize it. And in the people's, let's say, in the background or in the back of your head, what you associate computers with is devices that are very, very good at copying things. They've been copying things successfully for the past 50, 60 years, And whatever it is that you do, it's automatically like, this is speaking to Lauren's industry. I don't think it's a coincidence at all that we haven't found the new Nine Inch Nails or Chemical Brothers or Rammstein or any of these creative geniuses that were still prolific in the, let's say, 2000. And then MP3s really kicked in, and the money left to the degree from the music industry that, let's say, the David Bowie of now can't come through the whatever game show host format that musicians mostly now come about. There's no room for those geniuses to kind of figure out how they become millionaires and not still remain themselves and not just become a commercial product in that process. So what I'm, even just for music, what I'm so hopeful for in NFTs is that they will counter the revolution that was MP3s to put the power back into the hands of some of those people who are emerging. Because I think, I know I'm getting older. I'm getting to be 43, and this is about the time when you start bitching about the sort of new generation's music and this kind of thing. But I don't think it's that bad to say that there was much more interesting music to some degree that was happening around the time before MP3s hit.
It's so funny because I actually did a whole thing saying that the best time in music was right about here, 1991 and 1992, 93. I have a whole talk about that, but that's a different story. But I want you to think about the disruptors when industry started. So on e-commerce, Jeff Bezos was the first disruptor on e-commerce. And when it came to music, it was Michael Robertson with mp3.com and Sean Fanning with napster.com. And then if you move up, if you look at transportation, it was Travis Kalanick, who was with Uber. You always had a disruptor to really move an industry forward. And they were hated by almost everybody, but they were necessary. Who do you see to be the disruptor now in this space? And are they hated or are they not even known?
Some of them get sidelined a little bit.
Anybody want to try that one? Kristina, do you even see a disruptor in this space right now?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I remember, when Björk started to accept crypto for her album, that was a disruptive, really, step, in my opinion. But then, as far as I understand, she didn't keep, experimenting with the technology in general. And now I see it's coming from a lot of celebrities. The majority of those do not understand the technology and what are they doing. I'm not 100% sure that all these projects are fully, thought through. And then you see some really interesting things like associations for musicians and copyright experimentation with NFTs, etc. So I guess there is still a lot of confusion in the space. And guys, do you think that how we can improve the literacy among artists, musicians, all the actors, players of the entertainment industry, in order for them to know the best of the technology and what it can offer for them? Yes, Lauren, you already mentioned something, but I'm really interested. What is the process for those who want to start experimenting with the technology? Should they first, invest into cryptocurrency and learn something about Bitcoin, or is it more about NFTs when they even do not know that it's based on blockchain? And is it even important?
Yeah.
Okay, if I kind of finish my previous thoughts,
Sure.
I kind of got cut off. Sorry. Just to say what the big picture really is of NFTs is that it's what I've been saying for about a year and a half is that it's the liberation of a whole creative class of people. And what I mean by that is that the gatekeepers truly aren't there anymore. There's nothing. Let's say you could be a Pixar fantastic animator. But if you are going to have your character or your idea made into something that requires 800 people and multi-millions of dollars or whatever, many very, very creative people haven't been able to upload some of their fantastic, even simplistic ideas directly to a marketplace in order to make it become a viable force and for them to make an income. So even if you're a top level animator, this cuts out everything in order for you to just do whatever it is that you want to do and test it out with the market. Or if you have a drum beat, or if you have PDF writing, whatever it is that your creative outlet, or it doesn't even have to be creative, is if it's a digital file, it can be uploaded or made into an NFT, which is essentially a certificate of sorts. But because here's the thing, many people think that why would I invest into something that is a JPEG image? I could just right click and save it. But for those who are at least a little bit crypto savvy, you can go on Google and you can right click a save of a picture of a Bitcoin, but good luck trying to get the whatever $33,000 it's now worth on a marketplace with that right click and save. So it's the same thing, is that the counterintuitive thing to now apply to computers is that you can have a JPEG image that is as rare as the Mona Lisa. It's a one of one if you do it right with the laws of the marketplace and how from a verified account and you utilize certain kinds of things. And then whatever your output is, you no longer have to contest with galleries. You don't have to contest with record labels or anything. You can just test it out with the marketplace. And I would say that's where the biggest challenge is with regards to NFTs, is where the sophistication of the buyers meets the sort of output level of the artist and the prices. The prices are the most at fluctuation right now. They're not a very good indicator of value to a relative degree at this point because of that sophistication barrier. Because in some sense, it's really great that those gatekeepers or third parties have left the building. But then when you're doing the top end of things, then that can become a real problem because there simply isn't a navigational map yet that makes so much more sense. It's being sort of battled out or contested out. So that would be the why artists would, if they understand that this has never existed as a technology or a tool before for them in the history of the world. And now you're at the precipice of something amazing, not only in terms of the monetary veins of the world opening in terms of crypto and the borderlessness of it, but also the creative sort of whatever outlet you have. And then once that picture hits and you start to understand how much opportunity there is, then it's not so much of a problem anymore for you to figure out MetaMask and a couple of other things and how do I get my first crypto or whatever. That's a minor thing after you get the true motivation to realize that this is the cutting edge technology that can be utilized in a way like artists have never experienced before.
But I think you've started with saying something, and I think you validated it while you said it, and that is, it's not easy. What you just said to you is easy, but to the average artist, you just spoke another language. And I'm wondering...
Hey, I lost $5,000 today because I converted some BNB coin into ETH, and then I sent it to another ETH address, but I didn't know that it was on this Binance smart chain, so it wasn't real ETH. It was BNB pegged ETH, so I kind of lost that money today. So you don't need to tell me because I'm plenty pissed about that.
I think it's really important to share these stories, huh?
But really this important. Is it, and this goes actually back to Brittany now too. When we talk about data and we talk about where people are used to living, they're used to living in the platforms of today being Facebook, the social platforms. And it's easy, even though they overuse our data, we're literally slaves to them. But those are the simplest platforms to people because they're used to it. Are those going to be the NFT locations where they're going to give you the tools to say, hey, make this and put it on our platform because you're used to us? Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. I've been asking Mark Zuckerberg to let us own our data for 3.5 years publicly. And I actually, originally, before I became a whistleblower, I was approached to join Facebook's team for building out their blockchain project. And I didn't really realize at the time that Libra was just going to be an attempt to also gain access to everyone's financial data. As soon as I realized that, I became a whistleblower instead of working with their blockchain team because I realized that was never going to be intended to actually allow people to own their data within the platform. And I specifically asked them, hey, you can use blockchain technology to pay people in Facebook tokens every time they actually watch an ad. And it would be a really good way for you guys to establish trust and better consumer relationships. And, that's why I advise businesses all over the world and even governments today that, incentivize people to have activity on your platform. And there's a really good and honest way to do that. Or you could continue using the business model you have right now, which will eventually die out. And I still really do believe that the platforms that people are quote unquote used to today, if they're given a choice between a platform that takes all of the view from them or a platform that will pay them to use it, they're definitely going to start using the platforms that will pay them to use it, especially when a little bit of time and attention could buy your groceries every day.
Yeah, but I think VESA just proved it. And that is, if it's hard and you lose money, you lose trust. And I'd rather spend more on a platform that's consistent and predictable, even though in some ways it might be the wrong platform. It's the easiest of the platforms. And that's what sucks.
Yeah, that's true today, which is why I spend so much time advising blockchain technology companies, because I do believe that as soon as we can get the UI, UX up to scratch, that people are going to make the choice of what benefits them most when both of them are easy to use. But we're not quite there yet. I totally agree.
And what about regulation framework? Like last time we met, you mentioned that like the most progressive countries in terms of like data protection policies are Germany, Switzerland, and one of the least progressive is the US. Did something change? Also, does it correspond somehow with the experimentation of people from different countries with new technologies, NFTs, etc.?
Absolutely. So I still would say that the most progressive countries in terms of how strict they are on data protection still remain, Germany, Switzerland, and in general the EU. They have led the charge in actually having national and supranational legislation and regulatory frameworks to protect people. And the US is finally starting to actually do something. At least we have in the state of California and Virginia and many other states that are considering privacy legislation. We have our first big statewide initiatives that have been passed, and also in the state of Wyoming, where we have passed legislation that says you own your digital assets as your intangible personal property, and about 15 other states are considering passing those laws and building out privacy and blockchain technology legislative frameworks around that. So we're getting somewhere in the United States finally, but it is slow going over here. And unfortunately, we're still in a situation where we are pre-opted in for our data to be taken from us without our explicit consent, where it's the opposite in Europe. You have to consent for your data to actually be saved and collected by any organization. So I think that blockchain technology and the wide adoption of that is going to help solve some of those problems, because it is a consent-based mechanism. You can't send any of your data somewhere or create data on blockchain platforms unless you are actually sending that transaction. And so that I think is going to have a large role to play, where we're actually coming out with technologies that are reminiscent would like future legislation to look like. And I think a lot of national policymakers in the United States are starting to see that people are going to use privacy-enabled technologies, and the law will have to catch up with that.
I want to make sure everyone knows that we're talking about these topics, and we'll be diving much deeper into it in October 17th through the 20th. And that's the Future Blockchain Summit and FinTech Surge. And we'd love for you to participate in this gigantic event that's taking place at something called GITEX. We're expecting 50, maybe 75,000 people in Dubai at that time for this event. So please go to either FinTech Surge or Blockchain Summit, Future Blockchain Summit, and sign up and come to our event. And we're very excited to have incredible speakers there, plus the ones we're speaking to today. So sign up for that event. So think about this. With the brand new OS that came out on iPhone, it actually asks, do you want this site to track you? And of course, we look at the numbers. Facebook lost $1 billion in revenue already because people are saying, no, I don't want to be tracked. And people are starting to see the value of their data. What's the real value? And Facebook is trying to get over this, and they're scared to death of the new iOS 15 update that'll be coming out. So do you think that's what it's going to take? I'm going to say all of you, to where a device is going to make us aware what the value of our data is, or is it something else? Is it going to be the artists that are saying, hey, I'll do anything for your email address, like they used to, by the way? What's it going to take for people to realize their data actually has value?
I think that is going to be the larger adoption of platforms that are paying you for your data in a way that is simple and easy to understand. For instance, I advise a company called Big Token, which has been around for the past couple of years, and it's an easy app to use. You can log in and you can play around with it by answering different questions, short surveys, yes and no type things that it's easy for anyone to use. And the types of responses that that company normally gets when you're paid big tokens into your app and you can cash them out are, hey, I've had such a hard time recently. I've lost my job due to COVID or whatever it happens to be. And now I can actually buy groceries for my family. And that is so incredibly powerful that there are people that are realizing that their time and attention on devices, just by simply watching targeted content or by answering survey questions that are helpful for brands who are marketing, or maybe even governments or research organizations, that small amount of time can actually earn you enough value to take care of your basic needs.
That's great.
And it might not mean so much to all of us who have steady incomes and who are not thinking where our next meal is coming from, but between 1 and 2 billion people around the world are living on less than $2 a day, and they can earn more than $2 a day playing around in a data ownership application like Big Token and others. And so that is a huge deal. And that is what is going to lead the revolution, when you realize you could waste your time on this platform or take care of your family by playing around on this platform.
I love hearing that. So I got to tell you where I think the big issue that's going to pop up. So Christmas at my house, I had dinner, and Tim Draper from Draper, you probably know who Tim is, and another gentleman were sitting at the table, and this other gentleman says, hey, I just filed a series of patents all around digital assets being sold online. And he filed, at that time, 4 of them. Now this person and Tim was really curious about it. Now he's filed over, I want to say something like 900 patents in this area, which are now known as NFTs. So I have a feeling, and this is where I'm kind of concerned, that the people that have been in the blockchain space long enough have filed so many patents, and they're just waiting for things to be launched to go sue them. And I'm kind of concerned about this, because I think a lot of businesses are excited until they get that letter, if that makes sense. And I know that Live Nation was one of the first to get the letters. And Live Nation now had to automatically switch and say, we're going to use these people's technology, and they're putting up $1 billion to go off and sue right now. And I'm wondering if that's going to be a roadblock when we start to see lawsuits being thrown around because of patent infringements. Anybody want to take a stab at this one?
Well, I'm going to jump in quickly, just because I know that one of the companies with the most amount of blockchain patents is Bank of America, for instance. So
this is much bigger than Bank of America.
I'm sure, but there are few big companies that decided to go out and file all of these blockchain patents, where it's actually, a blockchain industry person that has been there from the beginning and sought to block other people from using these types of technologies. Most industry insiders have open sourced their technology because they got in this from the beginning, ideologically, not to make money or build a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And so if you're going to see people throwing around frivolous lawsuits, it's probably not going to be the OGs of the crypto industry. It's going to be companies that maybe there was a forward-thinking person that saw that this was a great way to make money in the future and started filing patents, even though their business wasn't even using or developing blockchain technology. And that will be sad to see.
I don't believe the senior people are as altruistic as that. I think they're business, and they see, it's kind of like the old day, again, I'm the old one here, Intel Capital, and all these IP firms came out to go after companies that were infringing. And I'm just kind of concerned that they might slow it down. I just think that ball's going to drop soon. And I am kind of concerned, because everyone thinks it's kind of a free, open world. And I think there's so many patents out there that no one's searching properly for. And I wish there was an easier way for people to see if they are infringing, so they don't go down that path. because that will be a huge dead end on the other side, if that makes sense.
I can maybe say something on the creative side of this, which is that I was listening to a podcast, I think it was yesterday, it might have been Joe Rogan or something, where they were discussing just how people don't actually mind government spying on them like crazy if they just feel like they're free. But we saw with COVID that when people started wearing masks, that all of a sudden they didn't feel so free anymore, and then there was a big backlash. So psychologically, I think, and like Brittany was saying, that there's 2 billion people to who this is obvious, and many countries like Venezuela, where they're not asking, why would I adopt crypto? They ask, how can I adopt crypto? So in the West, maybe, because I do feel as a creative and someone who doesn't like boundaries intrinsically that much, because they usually come in the way of me making a mesh of something that is a new thing and something cool. While I do value them, I think how those things could actually become a real benefit. The more patents and more infringement of liberty people feel here, is that the more creativity they will implement into coming up with solutions and how to be more free, and therefore adopt many of the crypto solutions that can't be bound by those kinds of things. So it's the forever cat and mouse thing that is happening. But at least to me, in multiple different ways, I feel like the avenues of expression of what I can express and how I can be in this world, it is increasingly feeling more like a totalitarian kind of regime of like this, rather than how I remember it being not so long ago. So this is why the crypto killer app being money is that, for the longest of time, people have already gotten their sort of monetary sovereignty infringed upon, and the arteries of the financial world kind of closing in on them. So that opens up, and then NFTs open up another layer, and so forth. But it's that psychological barrier of feeling encapsulated that will infuse it.
Kristina and I interviewed Brett King a few weeks ago, and Brett has written The Bank, Bank 1.0, 2.0, all the bank books. And he said in his book that he went off and surveyed a ton of people to ask, what is the currency of the future? Is it still money? And money in the eyes of all these elites, they said, that's not the currency of the future. It was data. Data is the most important thing in the future. And I'm wondering, what do we see then? How is data used as a leverage or a currency? Lauren, how do you see data being used in your eyes as a business tool to validate either your artists or your company size? How do you see data being the tangible asset?
Well, first off, I'd like to say that especially during a time of, hardship, this pandemic, right? Everybody is looking for new ways to have income. And I would say, especially in the music industry, especially in the entertainment industry, anything that involves a gathering of people, you're looking for new ways, artists, whoever else is looking for new ways to provide themselves income streams. And when you can't have a live concert, right? We already know that you're making less and less off of royalties every day, right? If you can't have live concerts, which outside of sync licensing and publishing is the main income stream for an artist, you've got to look at different ways to make money during these 2 years that we've basically, almost 2 years that we've already been through. So, when I look at an NFT, I automatically think data.
Right.
And I don't know that's something that I kind of want to drive home for the rest of the industry, because I think we still have to educate people on what an NFT really is. But I'm so happy that there's a way for people to kind of start creating more income for themselves in the industry, and NFTs and data is a way to do that. It's going to save the industry, I think, especially during COVID.
You mentioned education. I think it's so important to tell these stories. Like, power of the story is just incredible, and voicing things. And I guess that also you mentioned the altruism and non-altruism. I guess the important thing in order to influence the community in general, I would say, is role models, those who have lived through some stories themselves and know how they can benefit of this technology in terms of more different income ways in terms of protecting their data, in terms of copyrights, etc. But I guess telling our stories, and people on this panel definitely can be this power. And I wouldn't underestimate the power that we all have, those public people who can tell their stories and tell the world what can be our future when we think about the new technologies in a good way.
Well, speaking about power is going to be the audience. It's going to be at the blockchain summit, the Future Blockchain Summit and FinTech Surge. And I know that Brittany and VESA, you guys are doing something pretty big at the event, aren't you? You guys are unveiling something pretty massive. Can you tell us what's happening?
Brittany, do you want me to go first, or?
Sure, if you'd like to. I'm also happy to jump in either before or after you. Really excited about this, guys.
You go first.
Okay, great. So VESA and I have now actually been working on this for an actual year. Wow. And it's a project where we envision the ability to explain to the public through a series of NFT art, physical art, and an AR, VR experience. What is blockchain technology? What is privacy and data protection? What is the intimate meaning of your data? And be able to tell that through my story of coming out as a whistleblower, and in general, our experience in the industry for how these disruptive technologies can actually help protect people and shape a much brighter future. So what we really envisioned was to have this physical experience where we can take this traveling. So we will first be unveiling some of our art in Dubai, and then be able to take that with us to other places around the world, so people can have this educational experience that helps break down some of the technical barriers, I would say, to the understanding of the importance of what these technologies can do for the world. And so we've been working on this for a year. We've been trying to get VESA into the United States and me into Finland during the entire COVID shutdown, which has been unfortunately a failure of both of our governments to keep open borders. And so we're finally going to be able to be together at his incredible studio in Finland at the end of August. And we are both so excited for that. So I'll let VESA take it from here.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just to maybe have to walk back a little bit, is that the original plan, yes, was to unveil something at the Future Blockchain Summit, but it's looking like we're going to be able to shoot everything right before the summit. So we will be unveiling all the stuff in Dubai, but unfortunately won't be the Future Blockchain Summit yet, because we simply won't have the time to put it all together, because the post-production process of all of these images, videos, augmented reality, and virtual reality experiences are going to be quite workload heavy. And even though we've worked on this for the full year, we haven't been able to make much progress because we actually weren't able to get into the same space. And we even tried sidelining to Dubai to shoot over there. That didn't work out either. So this has been a true showcase of persistence that we've held with this, and both of us are so very dedicated to seeing this manifest in the real world. And I'm so excited by all this stuff that we're going to be able to do. And for myself, maybe from a creative side, the educational side is important of this project. But as we've discussed with Brittany before, and like you said, Ken, earlier, is that how do we get people to pay attention to this? And I think it's it's an emotional thing. It's that freedom thing that I want to showcase as to why you would be interested. And that's what I think the documentary film on Netflix where Brittany headlines is so important, because it does bring about viscerally what is happening to you and what's happening to your data. So art is going to be another avenue of how we can explore that to get people to see that side of things and why it's worth paying attention to.
Awesome.
Kiitos. I appreciate that. By the way, I love Finland. It's one of most people go, why do you like Finland? I go, because of the people. They go, really? I go, yeah. Once you get a Finn, you get a Finn. They're awesome. So I appreciate that. So last question for me, at least. This is where it gets confusing on the NFT front. Do I do something with Dapper Labs? Do I go to Ethereum? Do I go to Wax? Where do you go on what platform? How do you know to do it? What's the easiest route if somebody wants to start in the NFT space? Where do they go just to get informed?
Just to get informed is,
To start.
I'm afraid it's maybe a bigger rabbit hole, but to simplify it, and especially simplify it from let's say a fine art point of view, or even collectibles point of view, is that instead of investing into an art piece, if you see something that you really like on any of these platforms, invest into the artist and don't even pay attention that much to the art piece that you like so much, because the more you invest into the career of that specific person, their output is going to be growing and evolving and integrating, and that kind of goes across platforms as they start to integrate with one another. So that's important. Or if it's collectibles, it's the same thing. Who are those people who are putting it together? Is it the Bad Crypto Podcast guys? And they do it on Wax and whatever. So I think it's investing into the people and their creative output, and that's a short-handed thing. And then the rest will naturally follow.
I like that. By the way, I do have a good Finn joke. You ready?
Sure.
There was a man that loved his wife so much, he almost told her.
Yeah, it's this whole thing. When the 2 meters social distancing came about in Finland, everyone was asking, why do we have to stand so close to one another with this restriction thing? We want to be at least 4 meters apart.
Well, it's funny. I guess everyone actually have felt herself a Finn for a time being after being vaccinated. Like I'm honestly too slow today to react. To tell my husband that I love him. I guess this is because the vaccine. So this is a universal thing today. Lauren, I guess you wanted to share your tips as well.
Yeah, I actually, I was muted, but I started laughing a bit because there's, again, when any technology is new, I wouldn't say there's any one proper place to go for expert information. But I will tell you that hopefully between 2 and 2.5 months from now, there will be something that we will be able to announce from our end. I unfortunately can't do that right now in this particular video, but I will do that very soon. I'll make sure you guys know first, actually, and we can.
Oh, that'd be great. So if people want to find you guys, hunt you down to really discover what's going on, where do they go? What's the suggestions? Lauren, where do they go?
Yeah, if you guys want to get in touch with me, just social media is really the way. That's the easiest way. You can send me a message, Lauren.Bissell, Bissell, on Instagram, the original Biss, Biss on Twitter. And be happy to chat with you about any of this and advise.
I appreciate that. VESA, where do you want us to go?
The site that I started about 4 years ago is called artforcrypto.com. You'll find a lot of stuff there, both physical as well as the NFTs. But I'm probably most active on social media on Twitter, which is Art by VESA, VESA. And there's a link tree thing there where you can, if it's your boat.
It's there.
Brittany.
Brittany?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm also most active on Twitter out of all the social platforms. So at Own Your Data Now. So feel free to tweet at me if you can't DM me, and I'll either follow you back so we can DM, or you can also shoot me an email at info@ownyourdata.foundation. And ownyourdata.foundation tells you more about the digital literacy work that I do with my 501c3. So always happy to receive an email there from you guys, or hit me up on socials.
Well, there you go. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate you sharing time with us. Kristina, what's the big stories going on in Cointelegraph right now? What's
regulation? Binance, mining, China. All the same that we discussed last time. So yeah. But I guess the most important thing, and unfortunately, it's not usually a big news, but I guess this is really important when we talk about financial inclusion. Then we talk about data protection. When we talk about privacy, these are actually the most important issues that need to be covered more in the media. So check Cointelegraph and you see that this is something that is important for us. for me in particular and for my team. So I really wish you all good luck and plenty of success in this wonderful things that you've been doing, and also to the dog. Is he creating an NFT?
I got mine
I have
outside.
a couple of pretty good
That's
pictures
awesome.
that I might actually mint later on.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, everyone. We're looking forward to seeing you in Dubai. And everyone else out there, thank you for sharing time with us. And we'll see you in a couple more weeks when we do our next interview. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you all again. Bye, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Ma salama.
Thank you guys.